I had prepared to do an introduction of myself, but Mbogo did a good job of that. So I'll just move on to the next slide. So we're talking about implementing AI in claims, and I think Peter has given a good demo and sort of essentially what we are talking about now, a good case study as well. So for Turaco, some of the things that we value are, if you look down there, is simplicity, communication, and transparency. And that essentially is what we want to give to the customer. And one of our main taglines in our business is we're in the claims paying business. So claims paying is really important for us. And this is essentially because that is the value that we actually give to the customer. When I joined Turaco 3.5 years ago, a colleague of mine told me, insurance is the one product that you buy hoping never to use. So you buy insurance, you buy car insurance, but you really hope you don't have to use it. Of course, there are fraudsters somewhere here on that path, but generally, not here. Not here. No, I'm not looking at you, Peter. But yeah, essentially, there's because insurance is hard to sell in that way, you have to be seen as providing value to the customer. And a lot of the times when we provide value to the customer is when we actually pay out claims. You pay your life insurance, but you will never see the actual payout. Someone else will. For hospital, it's when you actually go there and you didn't have to spend a penny of your money. That is when you actually see the value. So claims is a big aspect of providing value to customers, and that is what we value. And that is why we come to why then do we need AI for claims processing. So from our own business case, before we actually ended up doing the AI project or the AI for claims processing project, we looked at a few different things. I've just made a brief summary of some of the things that we looked at. But we've all had a few conversations here about how AI allows us to automate routine stuff, allows us to do things faster, eliminate repetitive tasks. So that's one of the biggest values of using AI. And in the claims process, there's a lot of manual stuff going on that you then want to hand over or pass over to AI to help you with. Very good first step into AI for any insurance company, I would say. And then, of course, we've talked about fraud a lot here, and we've said none of us here are fraudsters, but out there, right outside this door, there's a lot of fraudsters. One quote that I've seen along the way is, for every dollar that you spend in fraud mitigation, you stand to save about $7 to $10 in terms of fraud mitigation. So it's an investment in technology that actually has a really good return on investment. Someone else said, I think it was in the panel, that 40% of revenues, I think they said revenues, goes actually out to fraud. I thought it was a little lower than that. I thought it was about 20% from my research, but from you guys, it seems it's 40% is spent paying out fraudulent claims. So definitely a really good area to invest in and reap a lot of savings there. And of course, we get improved customer satisfaction. We've seen, we do a lot of surveys, NPS surveys on our customers, and one of the biggest positive aspects of that we get from the customer is that they received their claim in a short amount of time, and this is within a few days. So, but when we use AI, then we stand to reduce even those few days into a matter of minutes, into a matter of seconds. I think Julius also alluded to that in terms of how they're dealing with the hospitals claims from hospitals, reducing a huge amount of manual work into just a few seconds. And then, of course, we get happy customers. So this is some of the things that for Turaco we've seen in terms of actual gains from deploying these changes. So again, back to reducing, one of the things that we promised to our customers, to our partners, is that we are going to pay out claims within 3 days. And of course, this is 3 days after we've received all the information that we require from the customer. So reducing that promise or over-delivering on that promise we have 3 days to actually deliver this, but we actually reduce that into a matter of seconds. We get a lot of value even through our partnerships with other businesses. And then, of course, it becomes a cost saver because then we are able to serve the same number of customers or a significant amount of customers more in terms of claims through the scalability that we achieve there, the efficiency gains that we get from reducing the amount of man hours required to actually process a claim. So that streamlines our assessment stage as a lot. Essentially, what's in terms of the business that we're in, which someone has called micro insurance, and we are moving more to calling it inclusive insurance. And internally, we like to call it affordable insurance. A lot of the claims there are a bit complicated in terms of there's no structured way to get documentation from the hospitals, for example. From Julius's example of you're at maybe in Nairobi hospital and you make a claim, there's a whole integration between the hospital and the systems. For microinsurance, there's no such benefit. A lot of the times we allow the customer to go to any Ministry of Health registered hospital, and that is the hospital on the corner. So they vary in the way they do their documentation. Some of them do hospital receipts that are purely handwritten. So getting structured information from that is hard. And also just being able to actually call up that hospital and make sure that it actually exists. We found cases where there's a claim and the hospital, when you call the hospital, it was closed a week before the claim. So something like that. So you have to make a lot of manual follow-up during the assessment stage, which then becomes hard. So being able to use AI or plug in AI there and get a few insights out of the claim itself and be able to tell whether this claim is payable or not in a very short time brings in a lot of value. So in terms of a real-world success for what we've developed, we've seen from the tools that we've come up with for claims that there is a huge agreement between what the AI is saying and what the human analyst is saying. We've seen up to 70% of our claims are in full alignment between the analyst and the AI. So there's lots of ways to use that to make sure that you're going along the process faster than normal. And because of that, then you were able to hand over the rest of the 30% to human analysts to be able to look at a little more closely, as Peter has demonstrated. So some of that then goes to the human, and they're able to say, because there's no agreement here, there's need for me to look at this a little more deeply and be able to come up with any or alleviate any doubts on these claims in terms of whether we should pay or whether we should reject. So what I wanted us to also touch on is the challenges in deploying such tools to actually process claims. So some of the challenges that we've seen are, of course, the data integration and some language barriers. A lot of the tooling out there is not Africa focused. And as I said, the way, especially for our industry, micro insurance works, there's no structured data that you can get from the hospitals or from the police stations or garages or whatever other sort of claims that you're making. So because a lot of the assessment for us involves actually calling up the hospital, actually calling up the customer, calling up doctors, then there's a lot of data there that is contained in terms of just being able to get like sentiment analysis from the voice recordings, get any sort of lie detection mechanism there, or be able to get in certain insights about, like they said this date on the documents, but is this actually the dates that they're talking about on the voice recordings? The problem there is these conversations are being had in the Luo in Kenya, or Luganda in Uganda, or Igbo in Nigeria. So there's not as much models trained on that, so those languages. So there's a lot of work then that goes into actually getting it done. And some of the solutions that we see are there's already some few operators out there who are trying to overcome that challenge. And the good thing about it is that they're sharing the information online, which is, like, for example, Jacaranda has shared an AI model that is able to understand Swahili and pick out some sentiments from Swahili, and you're able to build on top of that to then enhance some of those things. Intron Health in Nigeria as well, they do a lot of work with hospitals, and they're also sharing that information online. They shared like a huge number of voice recordings and AI models trained on those ones that cover a large number of African languages across Africa, including a few in Kenya, like Kikuyu, Luo, and of course Kiswahili. So there's a lot of solutions that then go into how can we work together to make sure that then that data is available for us to make sure that we are not losing 40% of our revenue by working together. Then, of course, like I've mentioned multiple times, unstructured data, hospitals having receipts that are purely handwritten. So even picking out key information is hard. You're not able to pick out the name from the hospital name, or tell whether this is a stamp or a logo, such things. So being able to deal with that requires a lot of manual effort. One of the things that we did do when we were deploying this was we had to dedicate a huge number of hours for some of our staff to actually look at receipts and say, this is where the stamp is. They look at receipts and say, this is an actual alteration, and then be able to then use that to train the AI models and then be able to pick out some of that data. So because a lot of this data that you can find online for models such as those are trained on very structured documents, then it's hard to really plug and play into our ecosystems. So it's more manual work required, but it's very necessary, but could be made even better in terms of solutions by then collaborating as an industry to say these are some of the things that we can do together and put out there for everyone to use. And of course, then it becomes a benefit to the whole industry. So I think this is part of what I've mentioned. So there's a lot of manual training involved, and very necessary, but then you have to, I think one way is to just make sure that you're collaborating a lot on this. Some of the other challenges that you could speak on is then once you have 70% agreement of claims of the AI processing and the alignment with the human analyst, then the pushing the button to start processing automatically, there's a lot of risk aversion within different teams. obviously very well intended. So a lot of people then are afraid to say, let's then start processing 70% of the claims. So the change management aspect of it is a huge, I didn't capture it here, but it's just a key mention that then you also need to be able to do that change management properly. So then you're able to make sure people are confident, regulators are happy, investors are happy with what you're doing. And of course, then you're also making sure the customer gains and makes and profits from all of this, not just the business. Thank you so much.